All right, so in this challenge, we're going to create some sort of a string filter. Let's go ahead and look at the challenge. We're going to create a function that takes an array of non-negative numbers and strings and returns a new array without the strings. So we have a couple examples. So here are the rules. We're going to filter out all the strings and return only numbers. So in the examples below, we see an array with the number 1, number 2, the string A, and the string B. And the result that we would expect if we've done this correctly is an array with an index of 0 of 1, an index of 1 of 2. And so on. So our second array of 1, the string A, the string B, 0, and 15, we should ideally get an array back with 1, 0, and 15. So down below, we already have our function set up called filter array, and we're going to pass into it an array. And down below are our test cases that we will uncomment to make sure that we have the right code. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first approach that I'm going to take is I'm going to create an empty array that's going to hold just our numbers. So I'll create a variable and I'll call it only numbers, and I'm going to set it equal to an empty array. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a for loop as my first approach to solve this problem. So for, and I'm going to initialize my I to 0. To iterate through our array, we're going to need a test case. So we'll say as long as I is less than array dot length. So that's going to take us from the 0 index to the full length of our array. And then that'll take us into our code block that we're going to run. And after we've run our code block, we're going to change I by positive. So after we have gone from start to finish, and we've implemented our code and put content into our only numbers array, we will then want to return our only numbers array. And so at this point, what we want to do is we want to push on to our only numbers array those items that are numbers. How might we do that? One quick solution on the top of my head is to use the type of property to get numbers. And if the type of property is true, then we push it onto our array. Let's look at type of. If we say type of A, we get string. If we say type of 24, we get number. So we'll say if type of array at index I, which we're going to start at 0, and in our first test case is 1, if that is equal to the string number. Now you might wonder why I'm setting that strictly equal to the string number. Let's open this up again. Type of 24 is equal literally to a string of number. And so that's why we're saying type of array at its current index is strictly equal to a string of number. And so if that's true, then with our only number array, we want to push on that item at that index. So only number dot push is array at index I. So in our first case, we have an empty array and an I set to 0. 0 is less than our array dot length, which would be a value of 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll then go into our code block. So we'll say if type of r at index I, which is 0, is strictly equal to number, which type of 1 is strictly equal to number, then only number dot push the array at index I. So we just put the number 1 into our only number array. So now we iterate by 1, and I equals 1. 1 is less than array.length, which is 4. And so we go through our if statement again. If type of array 1, which in this case is 2, is strictly equal to number, which is true, we say only number dot push array of index 1. So we just pushed in the number 2. So now we go up and we add 1 to I. I is now 2. 2 is less than array.length of 4. And so we say if type of array at index 2, which is the letter A, is strictly equal to number, this is false. So we don't go into this code block and never get an opportunity to push the string A into our only numbers array. We will repeat that one more time for the string B. So now that we have that done, we should get the results for our first test case, which will match all of our other test cases. So let's go ahead and uncomment out this code. And one quick thing that we'll find, and you probably already saw this, is that we defined only number as an empty array up top, and then we just tried to return only numbers. I'll go ahead and take off that S, and there we go. The results that we were looking for. And one nice little tip is that in the console over here, we saw that only numbers was not defined. And so that was the thing that tipped us off to go and make sure that we had our variables named correctly. All right, let's go ahead and take another approach at this. This time, I'm going to try to come up with a solution using the filter method. So I'm going to begin by setting up a variable called onlyNumbers. And I'm going to set it equal to array.filter. And then every filter is going to ask for a callback function. And it's going to ask for a name to represent each item in our array. In this case, I'll just call it item. Now we want to run a certain block of code on every item. So remember, the filter method only returns true values. So we're going to return whenever type of item, and so the first case, item is looking at 1, is strictly equal to number. And then our second item of 2 is also strictly equal to number for the type of. Then our third element, the type of item, is a string, and string is not strictly equal to the string number. So this should satisfy all of our test cases. So now the last step that we want to do is we want to return our only number array. Now this should satisfy all of our test cases. So let's go ahead and uncomment out our console logs. And the results are we get 1 and 2, 1, 0, and 15, 0, 2, and 123. All right. Now let's go ahead and solve this one more time, but let's go ahead and use the fat arrow function to try to clean up this code as much as possible. So here's one quick way that we can do this. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my screen, get rid of that old code. Alright, we're going to use the filter method and take one more crack at it with using fat arrow functions. Fat arrow functions are going to allow for much more concise code, which maybe as a new developer can be intimidating, or it could just be hard to track what's going on because it's less verbose. And it might not be what you feel comfortable with developing on your own. However, you will run across it more and more through tutorials and just reading other more seasoned developers' code as ES6 is used more and more often. And so one way we can do this is use a return statement. Then we can grab our array and put the filter method on it. And instead of typing in our callback function and all of that, we can just type in our item. Now we could put our item within parentheses, and this would be completely okay. But because there is only one item or one element being used with a fat arrow function, we actually can skip the parentheses, so it's a bit less code. And then instead of using a code block with opening and curly braces or using the return keyword, we can just keep this on the same line and use type of item is strictly equal to number. That's it. So if we go ahead and uncomment out this code, we should get the exact same results. Now, one little thing that we could do is suppose we wanted to use string. This would then return all of our strings. But what if at this point, with this code of string, of the string, we want to actually return our numbers as we did before? We can do that by saying that we want the opposite of string. So anything that isn't a string. We do that with the exclamation mark and the equal sign, and we get the results that we are going for originally. All right, thanks for taking a look at this challenge, and we'll see you in the next.